Crank up the volume and get ready for real-world bird hunting by listening to the Wingmen podcast by Eastman's. Now your host, Todd Helms.
Hey guys, Todd Helms here with Wingmen to bring you episode number 54, 55, a little bit different look. And I'm sorry I can't remember which episode we're with, but it's the height of turkey season. A lot of my guests are out doing turkey hunts and around the country and whatever it is that, if they're filming or they're just hunting with family and friends or hunting for themselves. But I wanted to take a moment and talk about a turkey tactic that I think used to be, it was how I learned to turkey hunt, and now I think a few guys are starting to get back to it as the ethics of turkey hunting start to become a discussion point. And that topic is killing turkeys without decoys. I know that there's a lot of debate in the turkey world about whether reaping it's obviously a legitimate method. It works very effectively, but if it's sportsmanlike, if it's the right way to be killing turkeys and to hunt turkeys. Obviously, we know that reaping can be very dangerous. Hunting with decoys in general can be dangerous in certain scenarios in the spring turkey woods. For example, public land in states like Wyoming, where I live, that allow turkey hunting with centerfire rifles. Reaping is not a good idea on public land or private land, for that matter, in states that allow turkey hunting with centerfire rifles for obvious reasons. You could very easily get shot, or God forbid worse. So that part of reaping has come into question. Is it safe? Obviously, I think that there's some safety concerns with reaping turkeys, or even decoying turkeys for that matter. But I'm not going to get off in the weeds on the ethics for this reason. And that has to do with, it's up to you. If you feel like it's an ethical mode of harvest and you feel like that bird has every advantage, then okay. If you don't, then don't do it. That's the great thing about hunting and about being free Americans, that we can choose. As long as we're operating within our legal bounds of harvest, we can choose how we do that. Obviously, I think that if it was ridiculously effective, reaping that is, I think state game agencies would be taking a look at whether or not it should be legal. But we also have to police our own, and with that comes that question of, if you don't think that it's an unfair advantage, you don't think it's an unethical method of harvest, then by all means. I personally have reaped turkeys in the past, years and years and years ago, before it ever became popular. We figured out pretty quick that if we hid behind a strutter decoy or a strutter mount out in an open field, it worked pretty effectively. And in fact, it worked incredibly effectively. I don't do it anymore for various reasons, the biggest being I don't think it's a safe way to hunt turkeys out here in the West, because of the fact that you can legally hunt turkeys out here with a rifle, with a centerfire rifle. So I'm not going to be laying behind a strutter decoy anytime soon out here. That said, we get into the broader idea of hunting turkeys with decoys in general, whether that's a strutter decoy or a strutter with a hen or a pair of hens or Jake and a hen, or whatever the combination might be. I have found with these later hunt dates that turkeys tend to be less responsive to decoys, especially male turkey decoys. My strutter decoys don't work as effectively as they did when I could hunt birds on April 1st, when they're flocked up and still establishing dominance and pecking orders. By the 15th or 20th, when seasons are tending to open in my part of the country now, or parts of the country I hunt now, Those birds have established that dominance, and they are 100% in breeding mode. And so from my experience, they're quite reluctant to come in and challenge a strutter decoy or even a Jake decoy. One interesting thing that I've done with my Jake decoys to simulate a Miriam's, I cut the beard off of them. Because you look at a lot of 2-year-old Miriam's out here in Wyoming, Montana, the northern parts of the Rocky Mountain West, and even a 2-year-old, his beard's going to be 6, 7, 8 inches max, sometimes shorter. That's about the same size as the beards that come on the Jake decoys from most manufacturers. And so I just take a pair of scissors and cut them off. If I leave anything, I leave a little stub, just enough that the bird can see it. Because I do think, I've seen it where I've had birds commit, especially in pairs or threes, where you think, oh man, this pack of 2-year-old birds or 3-year-old birds, they're going to storm this decoy, they're going to smoke him. And they'll come in and they'll look at him from a little distance, and they'll see that beard or something else, and I honestly think that beard throws them off. I think they think that bird is more mature than he really is. Now, the Jake decoy that I have is a half strut or 3/4 strut Jake with a laydown breeding hen. Should paint quite the picture. Cut that beard off, makes a difference. But as a general rule, the strutter decoys and the Jake decoys, any male turkey decoy gets the boot in these, especially as the seasons get later and later in the season and progress. Those hens are hitting the nests. Those gobblers are running hard looking for any receptive hen that hasn't been bred or isn't on a nest, or maybe looking to rebreed and renest. So the hen decoy is probably the best choice if you're going to run a decoy. Honest to goodness, anymore, especially in more wooded terrain, I've gone away from using decoys completely. Back to the roots of turkey hunting, if you will. And I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one that questions the effectiveness of decoys. Not that they don't work, but do you need one? And my answer is no. You don't need decoys to kill turkeys. And I'm going to go through those ifs, and I'm going to walk you through what I look for when I've left the decoy in the truck and I'm out running and gunning, hunting turkeys, going light, going fast, going far, which is a very high reality, a very big reality, very true reality out here in the Rocky Mountain West. Sometimes we got to cover a lot of ground to find our birds. And the lighter you can be, the better. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you want to run decoys, great, more power to you. I still run decoys, but it's situational. I don't always think that they are the best thing to have. And if I do decide to run and gun with a decoy, I'm usually doing it with a single hen decoy. Something that's fairly high profile, quite erect, that a gobbler can see from a distance and hopefully commit to. But like I said, that's not the point. Anybody can throw out decoys and call a little bit and probably have birds respond and commit to them. It is an art to call turkeys and commit, get them in tight, and get them killed with either archery or a shotgun without decoys. It's how I started turkey hunting when I was a kid, years and years and years ago, and it's how, honestly, where we started way back when, using whatever calls that we had, whether it be a wingman call or an old box call or whatever the old boys used. They didn't have decoys. If they did, they were really crude and nowhere near the realism that we have today, and they still killed birds. So, why no decoys? That's probably the biggest question that I get when I bring this topic up, because quite honestly, when I say to people, you don't need decoy to kill turkeys, I ruffle some feathers, and that's okay, because if I can get somebody to think outside the box and maybe rethink the way they're doing things, to be and still be effective, then great. I've added another tool to that person's turkey hunting toolbox. And that's the whole point of everything that we do here at Wingmen, is not only to entertain you with podcasts and videos and a blog and all this other media content that we produce, but to help you become a better turkey hunter, a better waterfowler, a better upland hunter. That is the point. And if I can help somebody leave the turkey decoy in the truck, or in the scenario sometimes you forget it, you don't have to not hunt. Go hunt. There's lots of ways to still get it done, and I'm going to walk you through what I look for in those scenarios. So, first question, why no decoys? Pretty simple for me. Carrying a decoy around slows me down. You're like, and I know what you're thinking. You guys that hunt the Midwest or hunt down south are thinking, dude, seriously, those things weigh, a couple pounds or a pound and a half at most, and you can carry a whole bunch of them. Yeah, you can. And for guys that are hunting back there and only covering 1.5 miles or 2 miles in a day, or in a morning or an afternoon or evening of hunting, great. If you're hiking into a spot or walking in or riding an ATV or an e-bike or whatever it might be into a spot you can carry a lot of stuff, there's not a lot of strenuous activity to get in there, cool, great. A lot of the stuff that we hunt out here in the West, whether it be in the Black Hills of South Dakota or Wyoming, or further in more of the Rocky Mountain front range like we have here, man, a lot of times we're hiking, it's more like elk hunting. We're hiking hours and hours and hours, shot gallop, calling, trying to get a bird struck up, and we can cover miles in a day. Miles, 8, 10, 15 miles in a day if you're cruising the right country looking for birds. A decoy in that scenario, now one hen decoy, okay, light, probably not a big deal, but I'm not carrying a bunch of them, and I'm definitely not carrying a strutter around in that mountainous terrain. It's not going to happen, even in that hilly terrain over in the Black Hills. I don't carry one anymore. If I know I'm going to be set up, walk in, get set up, okay, different story. I might use one. But it slows you down, makes you less mobile. And even you guys that are hunting the Midwest and the South, back east, you hunt some thick country. And you got to be honest with yourself. If you're running and gunning, that decoy's probably getting hung up in the brush occasionally. It's probably making noise that you don't necessarily need it to make. That's a big thing for me. Unless you're hunting with a stuffer, a mounted hen or some sort of mounted turkey decoy, has real feathers. The plastic decoys and even foam decoys, they make noise when you're in the brush. When you're carrying one around, walking, and you hit it on some brush, it makes that unrealistic scraping sound. Turkeys have phenomenal hearing. It's one of their senses that doesn't get played up enough, in my opinion. We all talk about their eyesight. Oh, they have such good eyesight. Yeah, they do. They have phenomenal eyesight, but their hearing is exceptional as well, and they can pinpoint your exact location. Ask yourself this: how many times have you set up on a bird and got a gobble, and you set up on him, and he gobbles very little, or if at all, again, and 45 minutes to an hour or longer later, all of a sudden, you might stand up to leave, you think he's not coming, and he's right there. And he has walked exactly into where you were calling from. I got lucky last season up in Montana and decided to wait out a bird that we struck up, and you've seen it on the latest turkey video that we've dropped. It was the jet boat hunt video. That bird, that gobbler I shot in that last spring in Montana, took over 2 hours to commit. He was coming the entire time, really, really slowly. He gobbled one time, and that was it. And I remember looking at Dan Picard, the the guy that was running the camera, Dan was running the camera at that point, and I was like, what else do we have to do today? We've hit all of the public ground. This was the last piece of public ground that we were going to hit. And other than bagging it in early afternoon and going home, I thought, let's just sit, hang out, and see what happens. It took 2 hours for that bird to commit. The terrain was such that he had to come to within shooting range before he could see where the calling was coming from. I did have a hen decoy out. He never saw it. He came directly to my calling and never had a chance to see the decoy. He was head on with me, and the decoy was off to my left in a little open space. And he never made a peep after he gobbled the first time. But he just happened to pop up over the ridge, and he was looking right at me. He was 22 yards. There was a giant cottonwood tree that obviously two of us couldn't reach around. You can see it's kind of a double-trunked tree. You can see it in the video. And the bird completely caught us unawares. We were ready, but we weren't like gun up and ready, camera on, ready. The bird turned and walked behind that cottonwood tree. I didn't know if he was going to even come out the other side. He could turn and just walk off the same way he came in, and I would have never had a shot at him. When he went behind the tree, it was go time. I put the gun up, Dan got the camera up, turned it on. As the bird walked out the other side, Dan said, I'm on him. And you can see in the video, I didn't give him a chance. I shot him. And probably could have waited looking at the video footage, but in my head it was like, this is now or never. We've waited 2 hours plus on this bird, and I'm going to take the shot that I'm given. Very real hunting scenario. Doesn't make for the best footage, doesn't make for the best video because it happens really quick and it's not obviously racked in nice and tight, but it was real and it was organic, it was raw, gritty. That's how it happens in the woods, and I was happy to be able to bring that to you guys. But the point of that I'm trying to make is we covered a ton of ground that day. Sometimes I had the decoy, sometimes I didn't. When I did have the decoy, it was getting caught in the brush because it was really thick in that river bottom. It was making extra noise in giving us away, I felt. We try to be as quiet as we can possibly be. Whenever I'm moving around in the turkey woods, I do not like to make noise. I don't want them to know that I'm there. If I'm carrying a bunch of decoys or even a single decoy, I feel like I'm just less stealthy. I can't move as freely through rugged country, and it's just one more thing that I have to carry. And when you're covering ground like we cover it out here, ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain. I know that maybe a foreign concept in the world of turkey hunting because we have a tendency to wear big vests or a backpack full of stuff, right? Well, there's a minimalist approach to it as well that actually my brother and I started doing way back in our Michigan days, and he still employs it in Iowa, and I obviously use it out here, where maybe 2 calls, a box call or a pot call, and a mouth reed, and a couple extra shotgun shells, gun, face mask, gloves, camo, go. I love hunting turkeys that way. Obviously, the backpack gets the nod because we have to layer out here. You know, a little harder to carry around the right layers and stay comfortable when you're out all day in the woods. Plus, you need to carry some food and some water too when you're hunting like that. Like I said, it's a lot like a big game hunt. A lot more like a big game hunt than a waterfowl hunt or a traditional turkey hunt in that sense. But I think that you guys back east and down south in the Midwest, I think you can look at some of these tactics and apply them to how you hunt back there. So, back to the question, why no decoys? They slow me down, they're noisy in the brush, they take time to set up when you're in a hurry, if you're going to set them up. When I'm not running decoys, I have very little, if any, chance of intimidating a gobbler. Our Miriam's gobblers especially tend to be pretty passive during the breeding season, when obviously You can fire them up and you get them on a feedlot early, on some of these early hunts where there's 200 birds, 150 birds on a ranch or in a roost area. They come down and they're fighting and they're really aggressive then. And a strutter or Jake decoy works amazingly well. During the breeding season, like we're sitting right at the last week in April right now, and our season's going to run till the end of May. I'm probably not using a strutter. We're headed to Montana for a turkey hunt tomorrow to film it. And I'm going to take a bunch of decoys, but I'm probably not going to use them. I may set them out first thing in the morning, depending on our situation. But I'm looking for those birds looking for their reaction. And if I get a reaction that is submissive, birds don't want to commit, decoys are going in the truck. And I'm probably not going to run one. So, loud, noisy, weigh it down, can intimidate gobblers. Even a hen decoy can get a gobbler hung up. I've had it work where I am hunting an open area and I put a single hen out where I know the bird can see it, and I'm working a bird, he's coming down this drainage, and I might call to him just to get his attention, kind of get him headed, hey, I'm over here. Get a gobble, and he closes the distance to where he can see the decoy, and he can see the decoy from 150 yards away, and won't commit. Hangs up, doesn't strut, doesn't gobble, is looking at that decoy, and turns and feeds off. I've had that happen more than once with Miriam's. Part of it is the gobbler's mood. Part of it is I honestly think if I would have not had a decoy there and set up better, I would have killed those birds. And I'm talking probably 6-8 encounters over the last 10, 15 years where I didn't take that bird because he wouldn't commit and there was a decoy in play. Take the decoy out of play and he's got to come and hunt me down. If I'm using the terrain right, using my woodsmanship skills, that's a dead bird, probably 9 times out of 10. And I'm going to walk you through those things. So we talked about why not. Now I'm going to talk about what you need to do to be successful when you're not using a decoy. You can't rely on the visual. You've got to completely fool these birds with calling. Now, first thing you're going to need is you got to be a good caller. I'm not saying you have to be a championship on the stage caller, but just any old turkey sounds probably aren't going to work, especially as seasons progress and you get later in the year. Gobblers have heard it, they've been shot at, they've been hunted, chased around, they've committed to a setup with mediocre calling and gotten shot at or picked it out. They're survivors. We all know this. So your calling has to be dialed. I have found that when I'm not using a decoy, once I get that bird's attention with cuts and yelps, whatever I am doing to get him fired up and get him coming, then I dial it back and I play coy. If I feel like he's coming on a string and he's gobbling hard, pounding, thundering, I'm going to keep talking to him. I'm going to keep working him up until he stops responding. Or if he gobbles a couple times and goes quiet, I'm going to tone my calling way, way, way down. And what I mean by that is I'm talking soft yelps, soft purrs, and I'm just going to be easily scratching in the leaves like I'm a hen turkey just feeding. Very content, little putts, little couple note yelps, and front end yelps. That's something that Beau Brooks, who I had on the podcast just recently, talks about taking your calling to that next step. If you can figure out how to do that front yelp that he talks about, it adds so much more realism. It's like a 2-note yelp, and it adds so much more realism to your yelp. There's a rasp to it that you just sound like a real hen. Practicing enough to get your hen calling, your calling, so like I said, you may not have the desire, or you may struggle to get to that competition level. That's okay. You don't need to be a competition caller to kill turkeys. And in this scenario, more is less. And I'm finding that more and more and more with turkeys, especially public land, heavily pressured turkeys. More is less. It seems like opening day, yeah, you can yelp one up, yuck, 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 and just get him coming right in, and no problem. As the season progresses, and as time has gone on, these birds are getting called to more. They're getting hunted harder. And so your calling has to be adjusted. Your calling needs to become more realistic. It needs to become, in my opinion, what works for me, a little more subtle. Soft purrs, putts, clucks, soft yelps, just like a contented hen feeding around. Scratching in the leaves, scratching in the forest floor. You got to be careful with that when you think a bird might be close. You obviously don't want to move. And so if you got a bird, okay, for example, 3 years ago, struck a bird on the way into a spot, he gobbled at the truck noise. I turned to the cameraman, was Luke Washington on that hunt, and I said, we're going to kill that gobbler this afternoon. He was kind of like, okay, it's his first turkey hunt ever. We went, we set up our tent, we got our camp dialed, we changed our clothes. He was pretty close to where we were set up, so we just walked back down. I struck him up again, played that bird for the next hour and a half, and he never stopped gobbling, but he just wouldn't quite do it. He kept coming closer and closer and closer and closer, and finally, I knew where he was he was in heavy cover, and he was down in kind of a depression. I knew he couldn't see me, so I started scratching in the leaves. I quit calling, I just started scratching. And the next time we heard him, he sounded like he was right next to us, spitting and drumming. Gobbled one time from there and then stepped out, and we killed him. Again, I had decoys, but I could have killed that bird without decoys. In fact, I think I would have had a closer shot and he would have committed better if I wouldn't have had decoys with me, because he would have had to come look. So what do you need to be successful? Your calling's got to be on point. You got to be reading the bird. Don't overcall. Be subtle. Sound like a real hen. Make real hen sounds. Once you get that bird coming, read his temperature. Read the room, right? If he's pounding away every time you call and he's coming, okay, keep doing it. If he isn't all that fired up, be coy. Be deceptive. Be quiet. Be shy. He'll come find you. If he heard you, he knows you're there, he will come find you. It might take a while, but he's gonna come and look. Especially with no decoys. Your woodsmanship has to be dialed to 10. Some guys that spend a lot of time in the woods are great woodsmen. Some guys that spend a lot of time in the woods aren't. They don't pay attention when they're out there. They're just there to hunt, and that's okay. But doing yourself a favor and becoming a better woodsman, being better at reading terrain, at knowing how birds in your area relate to that terrain and move through it, those are huge, absolutely huge. When I strike a bird in a lot of the areas that we hunt, I'm very familiar with them. I've hunted them multiple times. I know where the birds tend to be at what parts of the day. In other words, I know their roosting areas. I know their strutting zones. I know kind of how they travel through the terrain. Because out west, especially, Miriam's birds can move a long ways in one day. They can move miles over the course of a day and then end up back at their roost. If you know these things, you can put yourself in position along a bird's path or in a high travel turkey area, and with soft, easy calling, you could spend the better part of a day just sitting there. Soft, easy calling, you'll be amazed what happens. All of a sudden there'll be a bird gobbling, he's coming. I really like terrain. I like looking at a piece of ground. Once I know how the birds are going to move on it, or even if I don't, and I strike a bird, if I can figure out how to put some terrain between myself and that gobbler. What I mean by that is a ridge, a knoll, a hill, a creek bottom, something, not something that's going to make the bird hang up, but something that's going to conceal me from that bird until it's too late. He can hear me, but he knows where I am, and he can't see me until it's too late. Case in point, had an opportunity back when I was a school teacher to get out one evening and do some turkey hunting during the week. And I was wearing, I think it was a Friday afternoon, so I was wearing jeans. And literally ran home, grabbed some stuff, put on some boots, threw on a camouflage hoodie, grabbed a face mask, one call, gun, shells, and took off. No decoy. There was a spot, honestly, it was kind of a reconnaissance mission, and I wanted to get in on and figure out where these birds were roosting, where they were feeding, so I could hunt it later that weekend and go in and do like a full day or two sortie in there. And then, long story short, I didn't need to, and got in there that evening, was walking down the road scouting, and got into a large group of turkeys with several gobblers strutting, basically on their way to a roost. It wasn't late evening, but it was probably 4:30, 5 o'clock. So a couple hours before dark. Birds are feeding and still strutting and gobbling. The birds were on a flat spot at the base of a really steep hill that had roost trees and roost area on it. They were strutting in this open meadow. No way I'm going to get closer unless I use the terrain. I don't have a decoy, pretty open country, so I need to fool a gobbler into coming and looking for me and being close enough that when he pokes his head up to look, it's too late. And there was the hill, a flat spot where the birds were, and then a steep ravine with a little creek in the bottom of it. I was able to drop below that ridge and get right up underneath those turkeys to, I bet I was within 100 yards of them. Probably closer, actually. I was probably within 60 or 70 yards of those birds. Again, I'm wearing blue jeans. This is a scouting mission, right? I don't have a lot of camouflage on. I was able to call. Every time I'd call, I'd get response. Birds would gobble. One gobble I can't see these turkeys. One gobble got closer and closer and closer and closer. I'm like thinking to myself, this bird's coming. So I got up next to a tree, big old ponderosa pine, hid my silhouette, hid my blue jeans, got ready to go, got the gun up. Bird came from the left, peeked over, started to look, and I could have taken that shot because he was 30 yards, 35 yards. I didn't take that shot because I didn't know what was behind him. There could have been a whole bunch of other birds behind him and I could have killed him and others. Not going to work with one turkey tag. Plus, I don't know if there's a deer there. Could have been another hunter there. One of the first rules that we learn in hunter safety is know what lies beyond your target, right? I didn't know that. So I'm like, I need this bird to step down the hill, and so I have a backstop when I take a shot. And so I got a big tree between me and him. With my foot, I just moved my foot real lightly in the pine duff. And his head turned, and you could see him. He looked, strutted, and he strutted his way down the hill. I think he came another 4 or 5 yards, and then he was below the top of the hill. I had a shot, and I killed that gobbler. At that time, he was the biggest gobbler I had ever shot, biggest Miriam's gobbler I had ever shot. Some people might call that a bushwhack. I didn't jump out of the truck and shoot him. I didn't stalk him to get it at range. I called that bird in, He had to commit. He had to come look for me. But I used the terrain to my advantage. A lot of guys would have set up 300 yards back and tried to break something off that big group, and it probably wouldn't have worked. It probably would have been frustrated. Without decoys, you need to use the topography. You need to be able to pull a bird just over a rise, again, being safe, but make him come look for you. I'm going to set up, I get a bird and I know there's a ridge between me and him. I'm going to set up on the downhill side of that ridge. So that bird's got to come up and just over to peek and look. Now, some are more abrupt than others. In heavily timbered, obviously, I think this works well in any kind of country. It works exceptionally well in open country, because a lot of times in open country, it's the only option you have to get close or for concealment. There may not be anything to sit against, like a big tree, or you may just be like taking a knee next to some brush, using that to break up your silhouette, your outline, being ready, and that bird comes over, make sure your backstop's clear, and you got a shot. You've used your calling to pull him in to come look for you. No decoy required for that. That is the art of deception. That is the art of calling turkeys. To me, that is, I didn't need the aid of a decoy. I relied on my woodsmanship, my wits, and my calling abilities. That's skill. That is the art of turkey hunting. And to me, that type of a turkey hunt, successful turkey hunt, is the ultimate. Yeah, that's the absolute ultimate. When you can call in birds, especially public land, heavily pressured birds, without a decoy, you've given that bird, you've stacked the deck, you've given a card back to that gobbler and stacked the deck even more in his favor than it already is. And so when you're successful at that, that's just cool. That's a feather in your cap as a turkey hunter. And a big key to it is those woodsmanship skills. Knowing how those birds travel, using the terrain to your advantage, being quiet, being stealthy in the woods. Look before you walk. Let your eyes do the walking. Out west, let your binoculars do the walking. Always, always, always look before you go. Too many times guys are just walking through the woods, ripping off crow calls or yelps or whatever it might be, looking for a gobbler, and they'll stumble right into them. Especially if they're locator calling with a turkey call. You can literally pull a bird, he'll be completely silent, walk around a bend in a road or on a trail, and there's a gobbler coming right to you, and you're nose to nose. Because he heard you, he just didn't respond, and he's coming. Take your time. Don't get in a hurry. Take your time. Move through the country, drift like smoke through the woods. Easy. Calm. Listen. Be patient. Patience kills birds. You don't need decoys to do that. What about if you don't know your hunting area? You drop, okay, for example, tomorrow we're leaving to go hunt a place in Montana I've never been. I'm not going to have anything to go on other than what the ranch manager is going to tell me. I usually see birds up here. Okay. It's going to be fun. I'm really excited about the hunt and looking forward to it, but I'm not going to have the advantage of knowing the country, knowing the ground. So how can I get myself familiar with it? Back in the old days, man, you'd have to look at like a topographical map, and that'd be your best bet, right? In today's world, man, you can e-scout that. We do it all the time here at Eastman's with big game. We draw a tag and we're going to go hunt an area that we've never been into. We will pull up Onyx, we'll pull up Google Earth, and we will pour over all of that. Onyx's new 3D layer, holy smokes, the new 3D view, you can literally get literally a bird's eye view of the country before you go into it. So as you set foot into something, yeah, there's going to be differences. There's going to be subtle differences. Brush might be thicker. There might be more trees. There might be Who knows? That's what, nothing's as good as boots on the ground, right? But onX comes really, really close. And using that onX app on your phone's great. I like to use it before I go for e-scouting on a desktop computer or a laptop computer because the screen's big and I can zoom right in easier. I feel like I have a better visual representation when I'm on that bigger screen. And it's the same thing on your phone, but it's different manipulating it. I saved using the phone, the app for in the field, which you can do as well, and I'll get to in a minute. So what I'm going to do this evening, and I've been doing it, is I'm going to familiarize myself with that country. So I know, oh man, there's a bird gobbling up there. Man, if I remember right, there's a draw. I pull up my Honest Hunt app in the field. Yup. Actually, there's a little pond in that. He might be by that pond. That sounds about right. So I don't want to go all the way around that end of that ridge that's showing it, that onX is showing me. I'm going to stay just back. So I'm going to pull that bird out of that draw right or over the toe ridge right into my lap. Without that e-scouting, without the onX Hunt app, whether, like I said, on your phone or on a mobile device or on a computer, I'm not going to have a clue what's up in front of me if I've never been in that country before. We live in a time now when we have these tools at our disposal. We have such huge advantage in the game. Now, granted, the bird's still got to commit. He's still got to cooperate. But those tools like onX Hunt, they allow me to go into the field better prepared, more knowledgeable, and so I don't need my decoy. I'll leave that decoy in the truck, carry an extra bottle of water, or I don't know, extra Snickers bars, if we're being really honest. The point of it is, you don't need the decoys to be successful. There's other ways that you can trick birds and fool them. The benefits, no decoys. You can cover more ground more easily. You're quieter and more stealthy in the woods. It is the ultimate form of deception. It is the ultimate art form in turkey hunting. It is taking a bird without a decoy. About the only way it gets better is if you call one in using a call that you made yourself. Even better. You're going to need good realistic calling. You're going to need good woodsmanship skills. The biggest thing I can tell you when it comes to woodcraft, woodsmanship skills, slow down. We live in a time where everything is so fast-paced that when we get out in the woods, we have a tendency to ram and jam and go too fast until we find our groove. I'm guilty of it just like the next person. I want to go, I want to run, I want a gun, I want to see what's over that next ridge, I want to find that bird. Slow down. Slow down. You're going to kill more birds if you take your time and exercise some patience. Know your area. If you don't know your area and you can't manipulate a bird's movement by using the terrain features to your advantage from out of your head, use your onX Hunt map or Hunt app. You could do it on the fly. Like I said, I like to pull it up on the computer before I go and pre-scout everything. But I will drop waypoints while I'm pre-scouting on my screen, and they will download into my phone. They will sync with what's in my phone, so I have stuff ready to go. I have it, the area saved, I have it cached, I have it dialed, whatever it might be, and I don't need cell service, which is a problem in a lot of the parts of the country that we hunt turkeys in. I don't have good cell service, so I need to cache those maps in my app before I ever set foot up there. So I know, I can pull it up, look at it, and go, oh man, there's a draw up here. That's where that bird is, so I'm gonna approach it like this. The point of all of this is, hunt how you want. I'm not going to judge you for hunting birds with decoys. I'm not going to judge you for hunting for reaping turkeys, unless it's in an unsafe situation, and I'm going to question your sanity for going after hunting in an unsafe scenario. But at the end of the day, we're all hunters, and we're brothers and sisters of the hunt, and we need to act like it. We need to have each other's backs no matter whether or not we agree with the method. Just because I don't personally reap turkeys doesn't mean you can't, as long as it's legal and safe. I don't have to agree with you to support your privilege, your right to do that. That line gets crossed when the method of take becomes unfair. If reaping turkeys was so effective that we were hurting turkey numbers with it, and it was like an unfair advantage, I'd say yank it. Be all for make it, get rid of it. I don't think that's the case. I don't think using decoys gives us an unfair advantage. For me, if I can hunt turkeys without decoys, I'm going to. Just because I think there's more art to it. It's a more satisfying means of harvest for me. Maybe not for you. That doesn't mean, like I said, I will always go without decoys. I'm taking decoys with me on this hunt. And if we get in a situation where I'm like, yeah, we're going to put those decoys up, okay. But if I'm out running and gunning, probably not going to have a decoy. If you want to try that, follow the steps that I've outlined here, and I think you're going to find some success. If nothing else, level up your calling, level up your woodsmanship. It'll make your hunt more enjoyable, you'll get more out of it, and you're going to be a more effective turkey hunter with or without decoys. So hey guys, I really appreciate you joining me on this short solo podcast. I hope you learned something from this. I hope I was helpful with this. If you've got questions, shoot us a message on social media or in the comment section on our YouTube channel. Shoot us a comment, let us know what your questions are. If you have questions, you just got a comment. You think I'm completely off base with all this stuff, let me know. I love to hear feedback. That's the only way I can continue to get better and bring you the quality content that you deserve is through feedback. So I appreciate you checking us out. While I got you here, make sure you check us out on Instagram. Make sure you check us out on Facebook, YouTube, our blog, our website at www.wingmen.us. We've got all kinds of information. We've got an awesome weekly or monthly newsletter that goes out with some great content, stories, tips, tactics, recipes. We're constantly working hard to bring you great content, and I appreciate you joining me today for this. Until next time, we'll see you in the field.